In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can utilize the MIB Color Mix node. So this Color Mix node really pretty much does exactly what it says. It's able to take different values from multiple textures or even multiple materials and allows us to mix those together in a variety of ways. So let's start by taking the MIB Color Mix. This is found inside the Data Conversion tab. And let's start by just plugging in a couple of textures so we can illustrate this. So let's start by just simply plugging in a couple of Maya shaders or a couple of Maya textures. So we'll start with something like the checker texture, and then we'll use something like a ramp. It should give us a good way to see how we can actually mix these together. So let's take this MIB Color Mix. We'll simply double click on that, and you can see that there are actually several different attributes that are available to us. So starting from the top, we have the actual number of color inputs that will be calculated. So right now this is set to 2, and this will become a little bit more apparent as we move through this lesson how this works. Below that we have the control over exactly how these different color swatches or these different color inputs will be blended together. And then below that we have the weighting or the overall opacity value of each one of these different color inputs. So let's start by taking this checker pattern and let's middle click and connect it into color 0. Alright, now right away you can start to see some difference here in this Color Mix node. So now let's take our ramp, we'll middle click and drop this into color 1. And now you can start to see a little bit of mixture happening between these two different textures. So if we want to now come in and begin to change the way that these two textures are blended together, we can simply do that by altering the blending mode. So right now this is set to blend. If we want to, we can set this to something like a mix value. Now you'll notice that the mode 0 and mode 1 will correspond to color 0 and color 1. So whenever we start to adjust any of these appropriately, or start to adjust any of these individually, they should start to adjust their appropriate color input values. So if we set both of these to mix, this is really now just a simple opacity overlay. So right now, with both these set to mix, you can no longer see the actual checkerboard pattern back behind here. Now that's because right now, the topmost color, or the color input with the highest numerical value, is treated as the topmost layer. So right now, with this ramp set to color 1, it's treated as the topmost layer, and because its weight is set all the way up to 1, it's at full opacity, which means we can't actually see the texture pattern behind it, or the checker pattern behind it. So if we take weight 1, which corresponds to color 1, and begin lowering this, we now lower the opacity of that topmost layer. And now we can start to see behind it. Alright, so we really have, as I mentioned, several different blending modes to be able to choose from. We have the ability to set this to something like an additive mode, which will take the scalar values of both of these and start to add these together. We can also start to use something like a multiply mode, which will take these white values and try to make those transparent. And all the while, we have the individual control over each one of these layers. Now, as I mentioned, if we wanted to then start to add additional colors in here, we can very easily do that by just simply middle-clicking, dragging new textures in here. But once we do that, we will need to make certain that we have the number set to the appropriate value. Right now, with this set to 2, it will only calculate the first 2 color inputs. If we add a third one in here, we need to make sure that the number is set to 3, and so on and so forth. Now with this particular node, we have a maximum value of 8 inputs. Now let's take a look at how we can actually use this as a method of mixing, instead of different textures, different materials. So let's take these 2 nodes. We really don't need these anymore, so we can remove those. Now let's go back and take our MIB Illumination Phong, middle click, drag this down, select both of these and expose the output connections. And what we want to do is gain access to the basic MIB Phong shader as well as the refract node. Now these 2 nodes are actually right now shading these different dice. Now if you recall our lesson where we dealt with this MIB refract node, we illustrated a very particular problem that you'll run into whenever using some kind of a colored refraction. And that is that even though we have a white specular color set on our actual Phong material, if we were to go in here and look at this, you can see that. But once we take this material and then try to pipe it into a refract node that's using some kind of colored refraction, you can see that our specular highlight becomes tinted. So at the end of our lesson where we dealt with a refract node, we mentioned that we would see how we could use the actual mixed color node as a way of fixing this. So let's take a look inside the MIB refract. We'll break the connection in which the Phong was feeding into this, and we'll just leave the input at black. We'll leave the refraction still set to a yellow or an orange color. And now let's take this MIB color mix. We'll take our refract node, middle click, and drop it down into color 1, or rather color 0, which will be the base or the backmost color, the bottommost color on this layer. Now let's take our Phong, we'll middle click, and drag this into color 1, so that way our Phong sits on top of this refract node as far as this color mix node is concerned. Now with these two set, we'll make sure that the weight is both set to 1, and for the modes, we'll set this to be additive. And so what that will do is take all the black values and try to remove them on this Phong shader. So we do want to make sure that the diffuse and the ambience are all set to black, leaving us with just a white specular highlight. And what we should get, once the render takes place, is this nice orange refraction happening with this nice white specular highlight composited on top. So in order to render this, we can take the color mix node, and this can either be used as a diffuse color input for any kind of a material, or we could simply drop this right into the material shader port of our shading group. So now, let's re-render and see what we get. And there we go. Now you can see that we have our white specular highlights. And you can see the difference compared to the blue specular highlights that we had just a moment ago. Alright, excellent. So that's a look at how we can utilize this MIB color mix node as a way of either mixing textures together or taking multiple materials and blending those together for compositing purposes at render time.